Hey everyone, welcome back to Pleasure Principles, the podcast where we dive deep into the forces that drives us, heal us, and help us live fuller and richer lives. I'm your host Avik, and today's conversation is one that I have been really looking forward to because we are exploring something that's profoundly simple yet incredibly powerful, which is breathing and mindfulness, and how they can reshape not only our relationship but also everyday existence. Yes. And I'm joined by someone who embodies this holistic integration of the body, mind, and the spirit, Trey Drake. So, welcome to the show, Trey.
Yeah, such a great pleasure to be here.
Lovely. So, Trey, like before we start, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all of our listeners. Dear listeners, Trey, he's a certified breathing and mindfulness coach with over 10 different certifications, third degree black belt in Krav Maga, and an expert in behavior analysis and intentional communication. So he's spent over 17 years helping people develop the physical and the mental resilience. And let's be real, if you are into combining practical wisdom with transformative tools, then you are into it for today. So let's jump in and explore how intentional breathe and mindfulness can elevate your life. So, Trey, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Lovely. So, Trey, to start with breathing, we do it automatically, right? But most of us do it inefficiently. So, how can breathe work serve as a bridge between the physical health and the emotional well-being in our everyday lives?
Yeah, I love what you said that, yeah, it's something that we do automatically throughout the
Yeah.
day. But one of the things that really caught me in terms of the importance of the quality of our breathing is
Mhm.
if you think about it, if you take how many times we breathe per minute and extrapolate that across the whole day, 24 hours, we're breathing anywhere between 20,000 and 25,000 times a day. And if you the perspective that I take on it is if you do something that many times a day, it just makes sense that the quality of that activity, that quality of that behavior, and breathing is behavior, and it's behavior in the sense that it is very much conditioned over the course of time. And with conditioning, it can be good conditioning or bad conditioning. So it just makes sense that if you do something 20 to 25,000 times a day, quality of that breathing is going to have a profound impact on your health, whether it be positive or negative.
Yes.
And the vast majority of the population, at least in America, what we found through research is that the average person
Mm-hmm.
changes the way they breathe from good quality breathing as an infant into the toddler years. And by the
Mm-hmm.
time we go to school, first grade, kindergarten, first grade, which
Yeah.
is 5.5, 6 years old, we
Mm-hmm.
change the way we breathe for a whole list of reasons, but primarily social reasons. And that change from normal breathing, normal healthy breathing that all mammals do,
Mm-hmm.
to aberrant breathing patterns at 5.5 years old, then those breathing patterns maintain for the vast majority of the population until the day they die. So for decades, they breathe in a way unknowingly that is quite unhealthy, can be quite unhealthy over the course of the lifespan.
Wow, that's really amazing. Thanks for sharing this. And um, also, how did you personally experience this connection in your own life or uh, through a transformational moment that you have witnessed with your clients?
Yeah, this is a really great question. Honestly, I was listening to a podcast with Dr. Belisa Vranich, who ended up being one of my first mentors in the breathing space. I had
Oh.
already spent multiple decades in the meditation space, and what's interesting is if you go study meditation these
Mhm.
days, the way it's taught is you're going to have very little discussion about breathing, and then if
Mm.
you go into the breathing space you're going to have very little discussion about meditation, which is really interesting because my understanding of the origins of those two skills is they were actually done together. The yogis from India, the expectation was that there's movement first, and then there's
Mm.
breathing, and then there's meditation. So I spent all these decades in the meditation space with no real discussion about how my breathing might actually be affecting my meditation.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is almost all meditations, when you start meditating, says, at the beginning of the meditation, almost
Mm,
always starts with take a few deep breaths. Well, doesn't it matter what kind of breaths it is that you're taking? If you're already breathing aberrantly and you're trying to engage in a skill, i.e., meditation, to calm your nervous system, but then you take three terrible breaths because you don't really know how to breathe properly, what's
mm,
going to happen is you're going to activate your nervous system in a way that
mhm,
it's taking your nervous system in the opposite direction from your goal of calming your nervous system. So I say all that to get to the point that what was happening was I was doing okay in the meditation space. And then I end up listening to this podcast with Dr. Belisa Branich, who I think is a very important figure in the breathing space. And she was listing all of the aberrant ways in which people breathe. And I realized that I demonstrated all of them in my daily life. And I just didn't know that I was doing it. So that really sent me on the path of self-discovery when it comes to the way I'm breathing on a daily basis. And then it turned into, well, if I am engaged in all these physical activities, you mentioned Krav
mm,
Maga, I've got a third degree black belt in Krav Maga. I like to also delve into other martial arts, i.e., Muay Thai and
mm,
Jiu-Jitsu. And I also like to do things like I've done the Baton Memorial Death March, I think 6 times now, which is a 26.2 mile trek in the desert, carrying 50 pounds on my back, right? Each
mm,
of those activities requires a different way of breathing, potentially. And so it went from how am I breathing all day long
yeah.
to promote wellness in myself and to promote nervous system regulation throughout the day as I experience the variety of stressors that all humans experience. And then how do I get more out of my physical performance when I'm engaged in this whole, big variety of activities, physical activities that I like to engage in. So
Right.
the first thing I did was do a what they call a breathing IQ, which anybody can do by going online and just looking up breathing IQ. There's an online assessment that you can do just using a tape measure, a body tape measure that you put at the bottom of your rib cage. And what it does is it helps promote, first and foremost, breathing at the bottom of the ribs instead of up in the neck and the shoulder muscles.
Mm,
It also teaches you how much flexibility you have in the rib cage so that you can remedy that. And I had very little flexibility in the rib cage. I probably hadn't breathed in the bottom of the ribs for decades up until this point that I did this assessment. And it took about, I would say, just a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks at the most, for me to gain the maximal flexibility in the rib cage and learning to breathe at the bottom of the ribs instead of high in the chest. And I can say that once I accomplished that, it
mhm,
felt like there was a weight that had been lifted off of my upper body. Um, if you think about it, the vast majority of the population is walking around with their core contracted because they don't want to look fat. And if you contract your core, usually what's happening is you're also contracting the side of the ribs. And so a lot of
yeah.
people walk around like this for decades. And then when you learn to release that and learn to
Mm,
breathe using the rib cage the way it was designed, what happens is you're not walking around with that contraction, that weight anymore. And that was for me a huge realization and just an immediate change in the quality of my being and the quality of my life, just because when carrying that around anymore.
true. That's important, interesting. And like I mean, breathing is often described as a kind of remote control for the nervous system. So, I mean, for the listeners who might be new to this, what's a simple breathing exercise they could start with today to
Hmm.
feel more grounded?
Yeah, well, I think what's important is that we recognize throughout the day kind of the status of our nervous system and know, well, what do I really need right now? based on the status of my nervous system. What I mean by that is if I recognize that I'm feeling sluggish, maybe there is a high intensity breathing practice that I might do to help wake my body up, has a little bit of movement involved in it. There's one called Chit Shakti that I like a lot, where you inhale, breathe
Mm.
in big, and then exhale and throw the arms down at the same time. So I'll do a few of them just to demonstrate. It's inhale, arms up, exhale, arms down.
Mm.
Do 10, 15, 20 of those, and then relax the body and do that several times, 3 to 5 times. That can be quite powerful in terms of picking up the nervous system a bit and helping you get into the next moment more skillfully. If I'm trying to calm the nervous system, one of my favorite practices, this is something that Dr. Andrew Huberman talks about. He's a Stanford neuroscientist. They've done quite a bit of research on this in their lab, is the physiological sigh. What they found in his lab, my understanding is that this technique, more than any other technique in terms of breathing and meditation,
Okay.
has the quickest response in the nervous system in terms of calming the nervous system. Yeah, it has the quickest effect. So the idea behind this is that there's two inhales. It's an inhale, inhale, and then a slow exhale. So just imagine
Okay.
if you blow up a balloon as big as you
Mm.
can, and you feel like you can't get any more air in that balloon, then you forcefully blow in a little bit more air, right, to get maximum expansion, and then you exhale, right? Just let that air out. So that's
Cool.
essentially what we're doing. We're going to take a big breath in through the nose, and then at the top, when we feel like we can't get any more air in, we pull air in as quickly as we can, and then we open the mouth and let that air just naturally fall out.
Mm.
If you breathe into a balloon and get that balloon maximally expanded, you don't have to force the air out of it. All you have to do is let go of the balloon and the air is going to come out. When you're doing this exercise, think of your
Mm.
lungs in the same way. So it's inhale, inhale again at the top, and then
Yeah.
let that air fall. Let that air fall. One of the mistakes I've seen when people hear this be
Mm.
demonstrated is when they practice it at home, they speed it up.
Mm. Yeah.
That's a big mistake because what's going to happen is instead of
Mm.
slowing the nervous system down, they're actually
Mm.
activating the nervous system. So they're not accomplishing their goal. They're sending their nervous system in the opposite direction. So if you do that too fast, you're off gassing too much CO2. It's going to activate your heart rate, and your heart rate's going to go up when the goal is to make it go down. So slow everything down. Inhale, inhale, relax, exhale. Inhale, inhale, relax, exhale.
Yeah. Wow.
Usually, 3 to 5 of those is all that is required to get the effect that you want of calming the nervous system.
Okay. Wow. And also like I mean, you have mentioned the concept of tackling the five mountains: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and intuitive. So,
Yeah.
how did you vet this holistic framework? I mean, how can listeners apply it to their lives to find balance?
Yeah, I think it could be 5 mountains, it could be 10 mountains. It really depends on your life and what it is that you're having to tackle on a daily basis. The 5 mountains that I
Okay.
mentioned are just the ones that are most important to me and that I think apply to most people.
Mhm.
But I really think it comes down to it. I don't know if you've ever seen Tony Robbins does like Wheel of Life. How
Okay.
balanced is your wheel of life? So if you look at your the physical domain, for example, are you really focused in that area enough to say get a 10 out of 10 in that domain? Excuse me. If you think about your personal domain, right? Your personal relationships, what does that look like? Are you fulfilled in that area? So if you have a 10 in the physical domain, but you have a 3 in your personal development domain in terms of your relationships, and you have maybe a 4 in your health, then that wheel is going to be jagged and it's going to be a really bumpy road, right?
Yeah.
So those 5 domains, the goal is, can I get between a 7 and a 10 in all of those domains and really put my efforts in there? And what I find is that the more balanced I am in those domains, the more fulfilled I am in life and the better life is ultimately. And I find that I carry the breathing and meditation into all of them. And where I've had the most profound impact is in relationships.
Hmm. Wow, that's important. and and also like which of these mountains do you think people tend to neglect the most?
Well, I think that depends a lot on where you're looking. I can say that in the United States right now, it's the
Uh-huh.
physical mountain,
Okay.
right? The physical domain. We tend to be one of the most unhealthy countries on the planet in terms of our physical health for a whole list of reasons. But yeah, I would say that's number one, and I would say number two is probably in the relationship side of things.
Okay. And uh I mean, whether we are in the relationship or kind of high stress job,
Mm,
we often tend to have a conflict.
mm.
So here, like, how do mindfulness and breathe work help in those critical moments when emotions run high? So, what do you say on this?
Yeah, there's a study that I think about a lot when it comes to relationships. And
Okay.
what they did in this study, it's kind of terrible, but it's enlightening at the same time, is they took a rat and they put it in a cage. In the
Uh,
bottom of the cage, they can hit a button and it shocks the rat's feet. Okay. And a few seconds
oh,
later, what they would do is they would put another rat in the cage with the rat that they just shocked. And what they found is that first rat that received the shock on its feet would immediately attack the second rat, although the second rat hadn't done anything, right? And what I find is that in most relationships that I observe, is most of the conflict that people engage in is misdirected
okay.
frustration, anger, whatever it
Mhm.
might be. It could be that they're just walking around, they just had a meeting with somebody for the last hour. And for whatever reason, they didn't feel like that meeting went well. Maybe it was, a highly charged meeting where there was an argument. And then they move into their next interaction with the next person, i.e., their significant other. And what ends up
Okay.
happening is they behave like that rat that was just shocked in the cage, right? That previous interaction they had ends up interfering with the relationship with the next person that they interact with. And so what I find is that the vast majority of frustrations that result in arguments, for example, between significant others, and you could expand this to anybody. This could be uh, people that you work with. It could be anybody. The person at the gas station, you go get gasoline, and you walk into the convenience store, and your attitude from your previous interaction bleeds into your attitude with the person behind the counter. And if we can just bring some awareness to that fact that, hey, I'm a little bit frustrated after the previous meeting I'm in, and I'm about to have a conversation with somebody that I care about. What kind of practices can I engage in so that I make sure that I'm not allowing that previous interaction to interfere with my next interaction, and
Yeah.
instead I manage my nervous system. And when I talk about managing nervous system, it's not just the physical body, it's also managing your brain waves, right? So what kind of practice can I do as I'm transitioning from that previous conversation into the next conversation so that I'm as
Mm.
skillful as possible in the conversation I'm about to have with somebody that I care about? Yeah, so that's the first thing that comes to mind, is just really using that mindfulness to be aware of our nature being very similar to that rat in a lot of ways, that we
Mm.
carry around a little bit of frustration from, just the frustrations of everyday life. And oftentimes we are misplacing that frustration in the way that we interact with people that we care about. And we end up fracturing relationships as a result of that. So being skillful is bringing that mindfulness to that fact. And then being skillful means that we're bringing in certain practices, i.e., breathing practices. One of my favorites is like heart coherence, where if I'm transitioning into conversation that somebody that I really care about, and I want to make sure that I'm really skillful, I'll take 60 seconds or less and maybe even place a hand over the heart and focus in that space and breathe in for 6 seconds or so. You don't have to count it. Just 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Just think, breathe deeper than normal. Bring attention to that warm space where the heart is on the chest. Kind of think like you're breathing into that space and evoke a sense of gratitude and appreciation. And that has a profound impact on your physiology. It's going to lower your heart rate. It's going to increase your heart rate variability, which is healthy. It's going to have
Mhm.
a direct impact on your blood pressure. It's going to have, probably most importantly, a direct impact on your brain waves. If you think about frustration and anger, what that does to us, in terms of our physiology, it makes us more myopic, right? When we have stress hormones going through the body, we literally can't see in the periphery as well. We get hyper focused on what's directly in front of us. Well, that stress also does the same thing cognitively to us, to where we really can't think about other solutions, potential solutions for the problem that we're having, for example.
Yeah.
We also can't see the other person's perspective so well. So when we do this type of practice before we go into a conversation,
Yeah.
um, focusing on evoking positive emotion and breathing deeper than normal, it literally changes our brain waves so that we can see more possibilities and we're more able to take the other person's perspective.
Exactly. Very, very true. Lovely, lovely. I really loved it. So, Trey, that this has been such an incredible discussion. And I think that, uh, and would definitely what I appreciate most about this conversation is that you have made these practices feel practical, not overwhelming
Mm.
or of abstract. So, yeah. And for everyone who is listening, whether you are looking to reduce stress or maybe communicate better or feel more connected to the people in your life, then this is your invitation to start small.
Mm.
And even if it's just a kind of single breath. So, dear listeners, if you are inspired by Trey's approach, go check out his work in mindfulness, breathing, and intentional communication. I'll put the links into the show notes for your easy access. And as always, if you found value in today's episode, then share it with someone, friend, family, or someone you love, or and leave a review. It will definitely help us bring you more conversations like this, and also it can change someone's life as well. So, with this, until next time, breathe intentionally and live fully. So, thank you so much for joining. Have a great day ahead. Yeah.